Bernie Sanders supporters are the new political revolution, and it's more than just about Bernie. A video essay by House of Public Discourse founder Johnny Hill.
They're trying to find celebrities so that there could be a big crowd, but this was just a few months after my first film, and nobody really knew who I was. And I said, haven't you tried anybody else that could bring in a bigger crowd? The big stars at that time were Crocodile Dundee, Milli Vanilli, Vanilla Ice. Couldn't get any of them. He could only get two guys from Vermont who made ice cream. Right. And one guy from Michigan who ate ice cream. That was the extent of the rally. But it was amazing that day thinking about how is a Democratic Socialist going to get elected in Vermont. It seemed like an impossible task. It was so impossible that not only did he win that election, he won 8 different elections to be the only representative in the House of Representatives from the state of Vermont. And after that, he became the senator from Vermont. He holds a record in the United States Congress. No independent in the history of the United States of America has served more terms in the United States Congress. I remember asking Bernie back then, what exactly is a Democratic Socialist? And he said, well, it's very simple. It's what the Democratic Party used to be. It's what Franklin Roosevelt did. He said to me, what it means, Mike, is that everyone gets a seat at the table. And everyone gets a slice of the pie. Not just one person taking 9 slices and letting everybody else fight for the crumbs of the last slice. He said it means that we need not just democracy in our electoral politics, we need a democratic economy, an economy that you and I control. That's what it means. Focus on the democratic part of democratic socialism. I said, so it means essentially that the last shall be first, and the first shall be last.
all play a role in this country for the fight against civil injustice. We all must be willing and eager to bring forth ideas to make our nation a better place. And the fight must not end when a political campaign ends. This political revolution must be a 24/7, around-the-clock endeavor. We must fight for adequate job training, which in turn will help small businesses. We must fight for family counseling and other programs to help families stay together and, moreover, realize the American dream. The reality is it's way too late for establishment politics from either political parties to make a difference. It's way too late for establishment economics to help the average American. We need new thinking and bold thinking to facilitate a positive change from the status quo. We must address the issue of wealth inequality in America. When we have a nation today, when a few billionaires have overwhelming influence over the economic and political systems of this country, there is nothing we the people can accomplish unless we have the unity and intestinal fortitude to take them on. This is what the Bernie Sanders campaign is all about. There must be a plan in place that offers help to our cities, education, jobs, and justice for all, no matter how uncomfortable this may be for some in America. The United States is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. However, very few Americans realize this wealth because this wealth is in the hands of the 1% who trickle this wealth to offshore bank accounts. America has the worst income inequality than any other country in the world. America cannot run away from these statistical realities. This inequality is the biggest moral issue facing our nation today, and Bernie Sanders has been a leader of the pack in advocating the need for change. Moving forward, any political revolution promoting a shift in the American political process must address this issue, and the Bernie Sanders campaign has done just that. When we talk about the issue of education in America, one must realize that we live in a time of a highly competitive global market. In the House of Public Discourse view, it is insane that we have thousands of bright young people, many who are minorities, who have the will and the ability to get a college education, but their families can't afford to pay the ever-rising cost of tuition. This reality is one of self-destruction for America. Bernie Sanders has advocated for making every public college and university in America tuition-free. Moreover, he has not only done this from the speech podium, he has also introduced a bill to make it so. What this means is that kids, no matter their parents' income level, will know if they study hard and do their schoolwork, they will have a shot at not only a higher education, but achieving a better life for their family and future family. The bottom line is, the economic status of a person's family should not and will not be a determining factor in getting a higher education and is very much a part of the new political revolution. For millions of American citizens, the American dream has been locked up by the criminal justice system. This tragedy must be addressed by the new political revolution. America has more people in jail than any other country in the world, including China. Bernie Sanders' position on this issue are we must as a nation turn our efforts into investing in jobs and education rather than building jails and prisons. Bernie Sanders has introduced legislation that would create 1 million jobs over the next several years for those unemployed. Part of this bill would be to create jobs by rebuilding our nation's crumbling infrastructure. Moreover, these jobs would not be minimum wage jobs. A major part of the new political revolution is to increase the minimum wage from a starvation wage of $7.25 per hour to a living wage of $15 per hour. The Sanders campaign has been an outspoken leader on this issue.
What this campaign is about is not sound bites. It is attempting to address some of the most important issues facing our country. It's an attempt to force discussion on issues that are often swept under the rug. And today's discussion is an enormously important issue in terms of the destruction of human life and the expenditure of vast, vast sums of money in ways that all of us can think could be spent in a better way. Bottom line is, and I want everybody in this room to know it, in the United States of America, we have more people in jail today than any other country on earth. Think about it. China is a communist authoritarian country 4 times our size, we have more people in jail than China does, 2.2 million people. We are spending $80 billion every year to lock up fellow Americans, all right? Clearly, we can do a lot better. But we are not going to do a lot better unless we break through some old ideas.
Universal health care, once a taboo subject in America that no one or no politician would ever want to touch, is now a major focal point for 70% of Americans who say they support Medicare for All proposals. And the reason for this has been one Bernard Sanders, to quote Nina Turner.
Under the legislation that I have offered, every family in America would receive comprehensive coverage. All basic health care needs are covered, and in the process, middle-class families would save thousands of dollars a year by eliminating their private insurance costs as we move to a publicly funded program. The transition to the Medicare for All program would take place over 4 years. In the first year, benefits to older people would be expanded. Furthermore, in the first year, we are going to lower the eligibility age for Medicare, which is now at 65, down to 55. And in that first year, we will provide coverage for every child in America. In the second year, we will lower the eligibility age to 45, in the third year to 35, and by the fourth year, every man, woman, and child will be covered with comprehensive coverage through a Medicare for All program. So the argument is not how much Medicare for All will cost. It will cost a lot. Healthcare costs a lot. The argument is compared to what? And the what is an unsustainable system that will cost huge amounts of money and negatively impact our economy if we do not have the courage to change it.
In closing, these are critical times we live in today. The 2020 elections across every spectrum is one of the biggest elections ever in determining what direction this nation will take. For many of us, especially here in the House of Public Discourse, feel a political revolution is needed to actuate a positive change in America. Electing these corporate-owned, bought and paid-for politicians like Joe Biden has destroyed the voice and will of we the people. There is no mass evolving or having to admit mistakes, and people don't have to worry that Bernie will not work hard to fulfill his promises. His character is one the American populists have been craving. Bernie Sanders has accountability, which in turn gives him credibility. Bernie Sanders has a record that can be validated. Bernie Sanders has built and continues to build a sense of trust with the American populace.
We live in a world today where there are several 100 million people starving to death. They're starving to death right now.
All over this country today, there is a certain demoralization. And the demoralization is that some people believe that what goes on in the White House and what goes on in the Congress reflects the will of the American people. And by assembling here today as the Rainbow Coalition and as other groups from 46 states in America, what we are saying very loud and clear is that Ronald Reagan and his billionaire friends do not represent America, but we do.
In some of the largest cities in America, 50% of the kids are not graduating high school. The cost of college education in this country is zooming up, so you have to be a wealthy person to send your kid to college. There was once a dream that my parents had and many people's parents had, that if you work hard and go to school, you can get a college education. But what people like this gentleman do not know is, for example, that in Scandinavia, in Sweden, you've had socialist governments for decades, that in fact that country is probably in most respects more democratic than the United States. They have 80 or 90% of the people voting. They have strong labor unions. They have a more open media. They have a healthcare system guaranteeing healthcare to all of the people. Not to say that that's utopia.
But at a time when the wealthiest people of this country have seen a tremendous increase in their income, while at the same time the standard of living of working people and poor people has declined, I will be damned if I will vote for a proposal which will stick it to the middle class and the working people. And Mr. Speaker, I've got a problem. I've got a problem with a president and a Congress which allows 5 million children to go hungry, 2 million people to sleep out on the streets, cities to become breeding grounds for drugs and violence. And they say, we're getting tough on crime. If you want to get tough on crime, let's deal with the causes of crime. Let's demand that every man, woman, and child in this country have a decent opportunity and a decent standard of living. Let's not keep putting poor people into jail and disproportionately punishing blacks. While our children go hungry and sleep out on the streets, lack adequate health care or educational opportunity, the wealthiest people in this country have grown far richer while their tax burden has declined. We have an approach to campaign financing which, to a very large degree, allows wealthy people and major corporations to buy and sell politicians. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and ordinary Americans are shut out of the political system. The United States today is one of 2 nations in the industrialized world that does not have a national health care system. That has to do with campaign finance reform. The United States today, the chief executive officers are seeing their salaries soar, and the gap between the rich and the poor grows wider. 10 million Americans are unemployed. That has to do with campaign finance reform. The system, by and large, is owned and controlled by big money interests, and the President of the United States and much of the Congress does the work of protecting the big corporations and the wealthy people who control the economic and political life of this nation. This country, this great country, this democracy is evolving into an oligarchy. And an oligarchy is a country in which a few people have tremendous wealth and tremendous power and exercise that wealth and that power over all. We have seen a situation where we give huge tax breaks to the wealthy and you have 2 million people sleeping out on the street. Billions of dollars into all kinds of obsolete weapon systems, and you have 5 million children who are hungry. Let us give hope to people in America today who have lost hope. Let us provide jobs for the jobless, housing for the homeless, food for the hungry. Workers in the United States today are working longer hours, significantly longer hours, taking less vacation time than they used to take. And is there any wonder why so many millions of Americans feel stressed out? They need to work longer hours, they need to work overtime in order to compensate for the real decline in their wages. Let's talk about welfare for the rich and the powerful. Now, we start off from a proposition that the wealthiest 1% of the population in this country owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. When we talk about the growth of the economy, what we should ask ourselves is who is gaining that income. And what is clearly going on is the lion's share, the overwhelming amount of the growth in income is going to the very, very wealthiest people, while the vast majority of the people are seeing a decline in their real incomes. I find it ironic that it is the taxpayers of this country who are going to have to bail out banks that have made billions and billions of dollars investing in Asia. Is it morally right that CEOs of large corporations now make over 500 times what their workers make and seem to make more money to the degree that they lay off American workers? Walmart has replaced General Motors as the major employer in America, paying people starvation wages rather than living wages. We can fight terrorism, protect the American people without undermining the basic constitutional rights which make us a free country. They understand that our trade policies are failing when they note that our trade deficit is huge and growing larger every single year. And it seems to me, Madam President, that before we go forward again in pursuit of a failing trade agenda, we might want to sit back, take a moratorium, understand why our trade policies are failing,
and then put together trade agreements that work for the working people and the middle class of this country rather than just the CEOs of large multinational corporations. The wealthiest 1/10 of 1%, 1/10 of 1%, 300,000 men, women, and children now earn more income than do the bottom 150 million Americans. No matter how many children live in poverty, no matter how high the unemployment numbers are, they want more and more and more. And I say enough is enough. And you want to know why the American people are cynical about what goes on in Washington? You want to know why the Congress of the United States has an extremely low level of support or favorability? It is because the American people know they are getting ripped off. You got millions of people today who are working longer hours and their income is going down. Their wages are going down. This grotesque level of inequality is immoral. It is bad economics. It is unsustainable. This type of rigged economy is not what America is supposed to be about. This has got to change. And as your president, together, we are going to change it. When we stand together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. And I pledge to you that every day I will fight for the public interest, not the corporate interest. I will not abandon any segment of American society, whether you're gay or black or Latino, poor or working class, just because it is politically expedient at a given time. So let us go forward together and let us tell the Republicans that their reactionary agenda may work for the billionaires, but not for ordinary Americans, and we are going to defeat them. Thank you all very much.